Estie Briggs, thank you for so much for joining me on the podcast. I am 100% excited to talk about lessons from last time with you and dive into ways people can use, the struggles they've had for, growth and for moving forward and basically tackle today's problems using the lessons that we learned last time we went through, something difficult. So first of all, thank you for coming. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for inviting me. That question always sends this like feeling of panic through me initially, but I'm a certified, I do emotional intelligence coaching and change management consulting for a living. I'm a single mom, somewhat recently widowed, which I'll talk about. And I've been I've lived in the Bay Area my whole life, so I was pretty much born and raised in Richmond, and I'm actually living in the house now that my mom grew up in, which I'm really
wow.
grateful for. I'm in this beautiful space. I've got Wildcat Canyon is in my backyard, basically, if anybody's familiar with the open space and in that area. And we have way too many pets. We got 5 chickens, 2 dogs, and 3 cats.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of poop, Ken.
Wow.
What else? My daughter.
Wait, that means you have eggs right now?
So no, the girls are
Oh,
not. They're not kicking down the eggs right now. It's like
oh
winter time.
man.
They shut down for the winter, which is
Those are
fine. They're
like
sweet.
gold.
Oh, I know, right? Like I'm like, if this consulting thing doesn't work out and the eggs stay the price they are, I can market those. But no, they all have names, and they're actually, chickens are awesome pets. We could do like a whole episode on chicken ownership.
Wow. All
But
right.
yeah, anyway. What else? I went back to school really late in life, so I feel like that's part of my identity too, because I've
Mhm.
always been into learning. And I went to school for years. Like I never got my associate's degree.
Hmm.
I went straight to getting my bachelor's, but it took me 18 years to get enough credits to transfer. So, and then
Wow.
when I did it, I was just like, this is where I want to be. In fact, I really miss being in the classroom. And I graduated with my master's in 2019, right before
Oh
everything shut
wow.
down. Yep. I was the last class to actually get to walk the stage because the pandemic came the following spring. And so everybody else had to do like a virtual
Oh my
ceremony. I think they're
gosh.
back to doing regular ceremonies now, but
Yeah. And what's your master's in?
so master's of science in organization development,
Okay. And then
which
your bachelor's?
and my bachelor's is in leadership and organizational studies. So shout out to St. Mary's and shout out to the Penguins at USF too. So
Oh, that's awesome.
I met a
USF,
lot of.
such a great school too. And so St. Mary's, and there's a really good disc golf course right next to St. Mary's over there that I used to play at all the time.
Oh, cool. And there's a good running trail out there too. That whole
Mhm.
La Moraga Trail. I love
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Our
yeah, I
uh,
miss it.
our prom was at or our homecoming was at the Ream Theater. I think was
Oh,
the Ream, or there's like yeah, that whole area is super cool.
yeah, I love it, and I miss it. I miss being in school, but we'll see. I
So
don't know.
most
My
of the conversations we have with people are mortgage related. You didn't mention mortgage in your intro. Is that, I mean, it's obviously part of your life, but I love that it didn't come up because you have so much going on and so many things kind of in your journey that though mortgage is one of the things that you do or one of the areas that you spent a lot of your career, you really are focused on this development of people and helping people process through change and through, understanding why they're doing what they're doing or the way somebody might be doing it and kind of diving in and seeing, kind of analyzing ways of doing things instead of just, judging or making an
assuming
assumption.
absolutely. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I did. I worked in the mortgage industry for 20 years, and a lot of the friends and connections that I have now are either from mortgage or from going back to school later in life. And I'm really grateful for those connections. But yeah, one of the things I love is helping people figure out sort of why they do what they do. And I've done a lot of work around myself on understanding sort of what my journey has been. One of my favorite classes, like if I could plagiarize and offer this class, I would. I have to figure out a way to do it ethically. But one of my favorite classes at USF was Self as Instrument. And and it was this cohort of people. That was the other thing, was like, we're in a cohort, so you really get to know everybody. But there's this really powerful exercise we did, and I just redid this exercise myself recently, and it's kind of amazing to reflect on. So what we did was we drew out a timeline of all the major events, any defining events that have happened in our lives since graduating high school, basically since our late teens, early 20s. And then we shared it with people. And, it sounds sort of simple, but when you sit down and do it and you physically draw out a timeline of 1992 for me to the present day, and the different things that happen, like where I met my husband and when I had my daughter, and in good and bad experiences, it's like that all shapes who we are now. And then we worked on, where do you want to be? And we wrote this like 5-year vision, which I just looked at again, and I'm not quite there, but there's a lot that I'm doing that I'd hoped for myself. So I'm excited about that.
So when you did this, are you writing out at that time? Like you're writing a paragraph?
Yeah, we all had these like poster boards.
Oh, it's on a poster board. Okay.
Yeah, you like write out literally just a timeline, and you could draw, or, if people were artistic, some people drew pictures, but it was like just a timeline with dates of major events. And then we shared them with the group. And some people, there's like diagnosis of things, or deaths, or births, or marriages, or losses, or, happens, like it's life.
Yeah.
But you don't often sit down and reflect on it like that. So
oh my gosh, I'm gonna do this. You have no idea. This is gonna be a thing.
And then do it. So I did that in 2018, like before the pandemic hit. And now if I did it now, like everything between like 2018 and 2021 was like 15 times more intense than anything I experienced in my life before then.
Yeah.
So
did that when you were going through 2018 to 2021, so since you did it change your framework for when you went through things? You kind of thought back to that, like, oh, this is another timeline thing?
Yeah. I remember, so 2020, there's some events in your life where you're like, there's a before and an after.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, one of those events, one of the good ones was meeting my husband at Burning Man. We met in 2001 at Burning Man.
Everybody right now is reframing Estie Briggs. Like, they were like, oh, she seems like a really nice school teacher. And now they're like, oh, she did
I spin fire.
Okay, cool.
No. Yeah. So, future episode. 2014, my husband got diagnosed with cancer. So we had a 4-year-old daughter at the time. And this was a year before I went back to school, believe it or not. He got diagnosed with this like crazy, it was thyroid cancer, but it had metastasized to bone. So by the time it showed up, it was already stage 4. And there was a lot of different treatments available, and they did all of those over the course of the next 7 years, basically. But I just remember that day getting that text from him, and we'd been fighting about something ridiculous the day before. And he had this like lump in his jaw, and he thought that he had like an impacted molar or something. And the dentist thought it was TMJ, and it turned out it was a tumor that had grown in the bone in his jaw. And there was tumors down his spine that he didn't know about. And he was in the doctor's office, and he texted me, and I was like still pissed at him about something ridiculous from the day before. And he's like, the doctor doesn't think this is TMJ. And I was like, well, it's not cancer, is it? And he said, that's the fear. And I remember seeing that and thinking, shit, like, this is one of those moments where there's a before then there's an after. And of course there was a biopsy and then they ran tests and then it was confirmed. But that was 2014. I don't know if that was a really long way to answer your question. But yeah, I do remember thinking like, we need to just do the next thing. The next thing is radiation or surgery, and he went through all those things. And the biggest thing that helped me and that I learned during that whole period of time was just the power of connection and support from people, because people just came out to support us however they could. My sister started, he was in construction, he was self-employed, so he couldn't work. And my sister started a GoFundMe account that she didn't want me to know about because I would have told her not to. And it was just multiple expressions of people showing up for us in ways that I never would have dreamed that I would need.
Mhm.
And I don't know how I would have gotten through it without that. And so I don't know if that answered your question. Went off on a
Yeah,
tangent.
and there's so much there. I've talked to people who've said, when somebody's going through it, when somebody's going through something, life changing, or even somebody having a baby, that one of the things you shouldn't do is to reach out and be like, what
I
do you
do.
need from me? And like, tell me what to do for you. Cause
You
now
don't
you're
even know what you need. Yep.
right.
Yep. Somebody was like, let me pay for a housekeeper. I was like, yes, please. Thank you. Because the last thing I care about right now is like vacuuming and
Right.
scrubbing toilets, it's not my jam anyway, but, and people bringing meals over and people offering to spend time with my daughter and really just taking care, hanging out, spending time with my husband while he was recovering from different surgeries so that I could get out for a run or go do
Mhm.
self-care and to go to yoga or something. So I
Mhm.
didn't completely lose my shit, which I still did. That's the other thing I've learned about different coping mechanisms, both healthy and unhealthy,
Mhm.
because it was a long period. It was a long battle for him.
How many years? So 2014 until
2021. So 2014, he got diagnosed, and he was still pretty. And he was physically still pretty able-bodied.
Mhm.
It was a really long, slow deterioration, which was really hard to watch. It's almost, I don't know. There's no, everybody's experience with it is different. But it was 2014, and then he went into hospice, and it had metastasized, ultimately spread to his brain in November of 2020. And there's
Wow.
nothing else going on that year, right?
I know,
So
my
I was like, really,
gosh.
universe? I was like, are you kidding me right now? Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, that 2019 and 2020 were just intense. Just a lot of waiting and scans and surgeries and trying to enjoy those small like happy moments too, because we used to do a lot of camping and we still tried to do some trips up to the coast, and
Mhm.
the North Coast is like always one of our favorite places. It still is for me. It's like a sacred place to be up
Yeah.
there.
So during 2020, you and I chatted before I hit record, and I was talking about my experience in 2020, and now I feel like my experience was like nothing. So the perspective received. But I mean, because you're not able to go to the hospital with them, like you can't go into the doctor's office.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, there was so much we couldn't do. We had to wait outside in the car. I remember when he fell. He fell one time and fractured his hip and had to get rushed to emergency in an ambulance. And I followed the ambulance to Oakland Kaiser, and I just had to wait in my car to find out what was going on, because there were not everything was on lockdown. It did not feel real. It
Yeah,
felt like a movie I was watching
right. Is that
sometimes.
like, did you feel like you were kind of watching yourself go through it?
Absolutely. At times. Yeah.
What were you, how did you make it through sitting in a parking lot? Like, I'm sure, games on your phone are fine, but that stuff is happening inside. You don't know what it is. Where did you go in your head during that time
Family.
to not go bonkers in a parking lot?
Yeah. The first person I called was my mom when it happened. And she was right here for me, like she always is. Shout out to moms and dads. And then I called my sister, and again, like I don't know what I'd do without her, without family.
Mhm.
She always talks me down. Like that's what we do for each other. And his
Mhm.
brother, who I'm very close with too, was a big comforting source on the phone. So I just reached out for my lifelines.
Mhm.
I'm thankful that I have those kind of people in my life.
Yeah. I was thinking about that with, my wife's a therapist. And so we talk a lot about, what works for different situations, and community works for like every situation. And I talked to her about, people who are isolated, and, we're now, 2022, and yet some people are still isolated and missing that community. And I know for me in 2020, my community around me, and I try to isolate from community, but when I would, take a call or be on, a Zoom back then, I just remember how it felt like, okay, like I have people that are there who anytime, they'll take my call, and would reach out to me and check in with me. And community does just help a ton.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's still true for I know it's still true for me today, but that was
Mhm.
definitely something that I learned throughout that ordeal, was the power of connection. And even if it's just one kind thing that somebody said. I have this amazing yoga teacher, and she's just like the source of power and resilience and energy whenever I'm she seems to have like the magic, there's people that just say something and you're
Yoga
like,
teachers
I
are
needed
amazing.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, you're just like, I needed to hear that today.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. And I have people like that in my life that are like, the other day I was freaking out. I had a workshop coming up, and I've done it before not hundreds of times, but I don't know. I just had this imposter syndrome, and I reached out to one of the penguins from USF, one of my friends. There's a group of us that all had this like capstone project together, and we stayed tight after grad school. And he was like, you're doing it. He's like, you're out there doing it. He's like, you should be so proud of yourself. And I was like, thank you. Like I needed to hear that. And it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm doing my slides, and not feeling totally confident. And he hopped on a call with me and looked at my slides and asked some good questions. And it was just that 20-minute interaction. And the next day I just woke up feeling like confident. And,
Mhm.
you know, we
Sometimes
can't do
it's,
it by ourselves.
yeah, and having somebody who knows better, like it's one thing for somebody like the Trader Joe's, I love Trader Joe's, and I love going through the line, and I love talking to the Trader Joe's people. They're just, for some reason, the culture there has been built really well.
I
Um,
know.
but if they say, "Oh, you're doing a great job today," it doesn't mean much, right? It's cool, but when somebody who knows what I'm going through and can hear what I'm, or see what I'm doing or hear what I'm saying, and goes like, wow, you're really doing it. Like it's so impactful. And I think that's key for us. I'm always looking for takeaways from these conversations. And one that you just gave me is that, like, when you say something encouraging to somebody else, it may be the thing that got them through. It got them to be able to sleep that night instead of have anxiety all night. It might be the thing that, made them
Totally.
successful over not being successful.
There's this great TED Talk. The guy's name is Drew Dudley, and he's a really nice guy. I interviewed him on one of my podcasts, and he
Oh,
has the lollipop moment. I don't know if you've seen that.
uh-uh.
So he talks about exactly that, about how you don't know what a difference you can make in people's lives. And
Mhm.
if you've had some, which reminds me, I need to call Normandy now and tell him that, because you if you've had somebody make that difference for you, and if it was something small, they probably didn't realize it. So
Mhm.
thank them, tell
Yeah.
them.
I always look for, one of the coolest things to do is to spend your day looking for the person who might need, something, or that, small word, or because you see it all the time. And I'm getting to the point where when I see something and I don't say something, or like, I bet I could have made them smile at that moment. I actually feel bad later. I'm like, dang it, why didn't I,
Aw.
whether it's just stopping for somebody in a crosswalk, or whether it's, making sure on an airplane all the time when somebody's struggling to get their bag up, like, just jumping up, grabbing the bag and helping them up. Like, you don't know what kind of day they're having. You don't know what they've dealt with. And I'll tell you this, I was in jazzercise last night, and yeah, I do jazzercise. I love it. And we switched, we used to do strength class, and now we're doing strength as a sculpt class, and it has a half hour of stretching. And so we did a half hour of strength, half hour stretch. And strength, I rock. I love strength class. It's my favorite thing, right? And then we put our weights down and we're just stretching for a half hour. And I was like, this is
So
the
impatient.
dumbest thing I've ever done. Like, stretching for a half hour. I don't stretch before I run, ever. Even running long distance, I don't stretch. And so,
I'm too impatient to stretch too.
yeah, I was super pissed. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. This is really dumb. And also, and here's where I'm going with this, I can't stretch. Like, because I've never stretched, if I try to reach, like if I put my legs out here, second position or something like that, and try to reach the floor, I can't get my back past perpendicular. And so I found myself like judging myself the entire time. And I'm very athletic. Like, I love sports. I could play all of them. But to be not able to do something as simple as stretching, I struggled emotionally and like psychologically, going,
Ooh.
I'm a horrible human. Like, everybody's staring at me right now. Everybody knows I'm bad at this. Everybody, like, and I'm just starting to like pour on these thoughts. And my face went, sour. I just was like so unhappy. And it's so funny as we talk about this, that there are people that deal with that in life. Like, they're not able to do certain things, where they're not, they're thinking everybody's watching them. The person that spills, even though they're at a table over from you, what if there's something we could do to,
Make
help them
them
not
feel a little
feel
bit
so.
better about it. Yeah, we're all
Yeah.
humans at the end of the day. It's like, but yeah, there's probably a whole metaphor there, Ken. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah,
your stretching metaphor
I
probably
know.
represents something.
Yeah. To me,
Yeah.
it's like, it's putting myself in the shoes of somebody who doesn't do it well. Being the kid who gets picked last, what does
Yeah.
that feel like? And starting to feel like, to understand there's a bigger impact we can make based on having felt, what that feels like. I think it's just easier when you have gone through it to go, okay, I bet they feel like that.
Yes.
How much so in going through it, or even after going through what you went through, I've often told people, serve your way out of tough situations. Like, the more we focus on giving to others or spending time in others' worlds, the more easy it makes our experience. Are you finding that? Or did you find that where, and I know
That's a good
it
question.
was just survival for a while, but
Yeah, I can't say did much serving then, other than, I mean, it basically was my husband's caregiver towards the
Mhm.
end. Um,
Yeah.
but I have discovered something that really lit me up since then, and it's serving, and it's there's a nonprofit near me. So we live in Richmond, which is generally like a pretty underserved community in a lot of ways. I mean, there's good and bad parts of it, and there's not a lot of resources for kids for like after school,
Mm.
and there is this great organization. There's these two organizations that are coming together to build this community center near us, and when I found out about it, I was just so lit up at the idea of this place where kids can go, and
Mhm.
they're going to have like an open farmers market there, and you can take classes, and I could maybe go there and teach some classes, and they're partnering with a farm that helps reacclimate people that are getting out of prison into
Wow.
society and teaches them like agricultural jobs. And I love all of it. And I
Mhm.
just started volunteering there, and it's like the best. Like, if I could just do that and not have to work, I would do that. It's so
Wow.
rewarding to just go
Yeah.
spread mulch, to, just like talk to other people. And their farm
Yeah.
had it's called Planting Justice. That's the name of the
Oh,
farm. And then
wow.
the Good Table is the name of the community center that they're building near us. So yeah, serving is really, it feels almost selfish because I get so much out of it
Oh, wow.
when I have the time to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question.
What's perspective been like you since 2001? I mean, it's only been a couple of years now. What was the bouncing back like? What was I mean, that's a long time to go through something. 7 years is,
Uh, yeah, life felt like it was on hold the whole time because we could never make plans. And so I went through this. It was like the pendulum swung. So my husband passed away in January 21, and everything up until then was centered around, it felt like my world was so small because it was just, it literally, like, it shrunk down to this hospital bed in my bedroom of, look, that, like, that was my reality. That was his reality, actually. I shouldn't even, if I had the privilege of being able to get outside and do things outside of that space. But after he was gone, it was almost like I went the opposite direction of, before we could never say yes to plans because we didn't know like what the next summer was going to be like, or and we had my daughter's now 12, so she was 4 when he got diagnosed. So like 3/4 of her life was this sort of all this uncertainty, and it wasn't all bad, but it was really hard towards the end. And so afterwards, so 2 things, I felt like I grieved already. Like I felt like I'd done a lot of grieving.
Yeah.
And so I was saying saying yes to all the things, Ken. Like I came into 2021, I was like, any opportunity that came up, I said yes. We did road trips, we adopted kittens. I adopted 2 puppies, which I would have rethought, but but I just felt like I just wanted to just experience life and not feel like I can't say yes to things. And so, then it was like, I feel like I finally found the happy medium of figuring out where and how I want to spend my time. Instead of saying yes to all the things, I'm like more, done some work. Like we're talking about therapy before the session, and just figuring out like, what do I want to spend my time doing? And then the other thing was I had this same job for about 6 years. So even though I've been doing my consulting and coaching like on the side, I had this I was a software implementation manager for a company. And they were really supportive of me during the time when Glenn was passing away. But then when I came back to work, they had hired this consultant who turned out to just, my world was just shook up. Like I came back and nothing was the same. And that part was really upsetting and hard too. And that was when I was probably, I don't know if when I was at my lowest, like it feels like it happened over time. But I really feel now like the things that got me through that were connection, and also realizing that nothing's permanent. Like none of the good stuff is permanent, and none of the bad stuff lasts forever either. So
I'm studying Stoicism right now, and that's really where they go, is that, nothing's permanent, everything's temporary, live in the day. I do want to tap into this because I'm dealing with it myself. And that is, you said that you went from, I really can't physically do anything. You could get outside, but like planning wasn't a thing. So then you go to, I'm going to do all the things, which is, by the way, that's the story of my 2021, where I took way more trips than I should have. And it was just like, you cannot tie me down during that year. And I found that to be negative as well. Like, it wasn't as negative as not being able to do anything, but it was like, gosh, my family's like, we haven't seen you in a long time. So What was the moment when you realized that was too much? Like, did you know when you were accepting all the things, or did you not even care? You're just like, I'm just all in.
The moment that I realized that I'd said yes to too much was probably about 4 months after I said yes to the puppies, because
Okay.
it was, I was, I was so, I remember feeling like really overwhelmed and stressed out all the time. And my daughter was like, you don't seem happy. And I was cleaning up dog shit and replacing things that they'd been chewing up and destroying. And I was like, oh, I remember it was so clear. I was like, oh, this is the consequences of my actions. Like, Doc.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, I need to, like, instead of being all in on everything, I need to be more intentional about what I say yes to. And I had a
Mhm.
really good talk with my daughter. We decided to find a new home for one of the puppies. And, and it wasn't the worst thing. I was like, there's no way we can get, it's like, yes, there's a way. We can.
Totally.
I'm not going to put her to sleep, but, I need to find her. Like, this isn't going to work for me. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to spend my life like this stressed out.
Right.
So it was probably about 4 months after saying yes to all the things, then I was like, let me put everything through some sort of set of filters and decide what gets a yes.
Mhm.
Um, and that was,
Do you have that set of filters? Like, have you built that?
so I think it all narrows down to identifying your core values,
Mhm.
which we did in that same class that I had mentioned earlier, but that I've back to visit. And there's all kinds of resources. Like Brene Brown has a whole thing on how to figure out what your values are. And when I sit down and really get still and think about it, the things that I like, she says you should pick 2 or 3 top core values at the most. You can't have 20. Like, you can look at a list and say, I want all 20. But if you really want to have like a compass or a guiding set of values, it only works well if you have 1 or 2 or maybe 3. And so mine were, I went through this exercise, and mine, the top one, and it still is time, because it's not something that we can get back, and it's something that we can choose how we spend it. And um that's what helps me. So if I have like 5 things that I'm trying to decide if I can say yes to, and one of them, like, I just said no today to this lunch with a group of people that I didn't really want to hang. And they're nice people. It's just when I think about it, I'm like, do I want to spend 3 hours on a Saturday doing that? And 3 hours on Saturdays, like, you don't get those all the time. They're not an unlimited supply. So
Mhm.
time. And then the other one is curiosity, because I'm really big on learning,
Mhm.
and not just learning, not just curiosity, like how does stuff work, but curiosity, like stepping outside myself. And this is what I like to help teach people too, with emotional intelligence, and going like, wow, why am I so stressed out right now? Like, what's going on? Or like you were talking about how you were, I don't know if it was before or after we hit record, you were really angry for a period of time. And it's like
Yeah.
just recognizing that you're angry, like thinking
Mhm.
about being angry is the first step. Cause then it's like, okay, well, what's going on? Let's uncover it. Let's find out more. Let's not just make assumptions.
Mhm.
Um, Same goes with dealing with other people. Somebody's behaving badly, chances are there's something happening in their life that is hard for them. Not that that forgives bad behavior, but
Mhm.
so curiosity, time, and authenticity was my third one.
I love it. Authenticity being, what's most authentically you.
Yeah. I got really tired of just worried about what people think. And, you know, it, because if you make decisions based on what other people are going to think, you're never going to be happy, because nobody's
Mhm.
ever, you can't make everybody happy. So it's got to be what feels right to you. And I don't always make the right decision. I mean, I've far from it, but that helped. That's
Uh,
helped decide what to say yes to.
So good. And so much there. The time one is so interesting. I just read, somebody said if somebody walked up to you on the street and said, can you please give me $100? Or like a friend called, hey, send me $100. Be like, $100, what are you going to use it for? Like, we would question it. We would be like, if they're like, I just want $100, you'd be like, no, like you're not getting $100, right? But if somebody calls you up and says, can I pick your brain for an hour? You'd be like, yeah, call me, which is more than $100. Like it's that
Totally.
you have to
Yes.
think of it in that term, like you're gifting somebody that time.
Which is which was why when I had a full-time job and I felt this constant like expectation of, I had to be available all day and I had to be in front of my computer and I had an awesome team that I worked with who I loved. But the expectation was that I was working 40 hours a week and I wasn't always working 40 hours a week. Like I'm not gonna lie, and it's like I don't like the concept of trading time for money. I don't, and I know it sounds kind of woo-woo, but I don't like the concept that, for us to do our jobs well, it means that we have to be on call and and performing and available 40 hours a week. And I know there's CEOs out there that probably don't want to hear that, but that's why I'm self-employed now. We'll see how it goes.
It's so funny. People get mad at me for not texting them back. And
yeah, I'm so bad.
Yeah, but you know what? If I'm talking and having a deep conversation with somebody, or not even deep, if I'm having a conversation where they're telling me something, I'm not going to look at my phone. Like I really want to be engaged. And so I can feel it vibrating. So I switch my phone when my wife calls, it's a different vibrate. And so I can tell it's her. And so if I'm at a conference and I'm engaged in these conversations, I know that I need to go and check that because that's going to be Mindy, make sure that, I get back to her. But like everything else can go to my pocket. And so, yeah, I don't.
That's your filter.
But the expectation is that like, well, I inserted myself into your schedule. Why didn't you respond? It's like, well, I don't know. I don't know why that's an expectation.
I know. Or just because your calendar's open, I'm going to put a meeting on there and expect that you're going to be on Zoom in 15 minutes and like.
Right.
Which I get it. I mean, I know. Like there's ways that things need to work, but yeah. There's this great, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Two things that came to mind. There's a really good podcast called Deep Work. I don't know if you've heard of that with Cal Newport. And he talks about just that, how we have this like time confetti where it's like, we spend our days like, oh, I have 15 minutes. Let me check email. And like, we're not intentional about how we spend our time, especially for creators. Like, if you're making content, you're creating content, he refers to something as attention residue. Like just from looking at your phone and seeing an email and going, oh, I'll deal with that later. You've already lost brain cells to that distraction. And there's probably a better, more scientific way to explain it, but.
It's called Deep Work.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to make a note. It's funny when you say that. I'm trying to do this where there it is, Deep Work. And by the way, just so you know what I'm doing, I have a note in my phone. I'm running everything off reminders and notes using Apple, and I have things to watch, listen to, and read. Ooh. And so,
did I see Notion on there? Does that say Notion?
It doesn't say.
Oh, sorry, I thought it.
No, but should I write that down?
Notion is this like awesome repository. It's almost like my personal intranet. So like I manage all my projects, and you can make Jenny Blake is another podcaster I love and listen to, and she's a big Notion advocate. And they swear it's for people, like there's this whole YouTube series on how people with ADHD can use Notion to like manage their lives.
Oh.
I haven't finished an episode, which I think speaks.
There you go.
I started watching it and then I did something else. But anyway, yeah, I love it. It's a good tool.
Well, reminders for me, I can make Siri do like Siri. If I say remind me to, it shows up on my front page of my phone. And so I'm doing it that way. But it's
funny. I turned off my Hey Siri because I always call my daughter Sweetie. And so every time I would say Hey Siri or Hey Sweetie, Siri would be like, what do you want? I'd be like, that's creepy. So I
Yeah.
just turned it off.
On the note that you were saying, so I walked by my mail yesterday. The mail had just come in. My daughter, dropped it off on the front, on our like the little front area, and I walked by it, and I was going to the car where my wife was waiting for me to leave, and I looked at the mail, and I thought, I'm just going to look through it real fast, and I went, nope, and I kept walking. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to not start anything I can't finish. So I don't open my emails in like a dentist office, because why would I want to add stuff to Mindy calls it
Yes.
a mental mess.
It's
So
an open loop. Yep.
yeah. Mindy sent me a thing on mental load, which is a really cool concept of, if I haven't done something that I said I was going to do, she starts to have to think about it. And so even if she doesn't say, you didn't do this, just the fact that has to be on her head, it's in her mental load. And so she's like, you need to, understand my mental load is overwhelming. And so now I'm not only will I do things now more, I'll also say, hey, just so you know, this hasn't been done. Here's why it hasn't been done. And I'm doing it on Tuesday. And that just takes it out of her mental load so that she's able to go, okay, actually he's focused on
that.
Yeah, there's so much there when you start doing, some of this digging and listening to good podcasts and yeah. So hopefully this is a good podcast. People, I forget we're on a podcast. Just
But people are still on. I know. I'm like,
I'm sure they are. This has been so awesome. And I'm going to kind of wrap it with something that you said earlier. You've always struck me as somebody who is constantly working on yourself and constantly trying to grow and be a better version of Estie every day. And part of that, and I love that you mentioned team, that you had your team, which was including your brother-in-law and your sister and your mom and the people you could just connect with and would get you through it. You also said, working with a therapist to do, to work through some things on how you select things. And I've been saying this a lot, but like therapy is changing me. Like it's making me such a better human. It's hard. If you're doing it right, it can be
I don't
very
want to look under there. Yeah.
I'm facing some things that are like, I don't want to deal with, but
yeah,
that's it's another part of your team. Like it's find the people that make you the best that you can be. We're trying to convince our kids of that, when you're dating, if they make you a better version of yourself, that's the starting point. Like if they don't, that's a quick end point.
That's a red flag. Yep.
Total red flag. And so, but being around people that never changes in life, that's always going to be something that's going to be valuable. It's why I'm trying to get Mindy to let me move into an assisted living facility as soon as we qualify. Because the more people I can be around, the better. But even for introverts, they need that human interaction. And I love that you leverage that to be able to get, through one of the things that's the most painful thing I can imagine is going through the 7 years that you went through. And I appreciate you being super open about, how you got through that. I know you're constantly still going to work and you won't, slow it down. You've got a whole new life adventure ahead of you. And so I really appreciate you sharing with us today.
It was my honor. Thank you, Ken. Thank you so much. And happy rest of your 2023. Are you doing your push-up challenge?
I am. Yep.
You are?
Oh, yeah, we've got like 15 people, 16 people on it. And so far everybody's still in. So, but it's early.
It's inspiring.
It's 66,795 push-ups. And we had 2 people finish last year. And I hope to have even more finish this year.
Awesome.
But another great example, we get through it by being a community and by knowing
Totally.
when somebody from my group calls me and goes, I noticed for 3 days you didn't upload or you didn't check the box, then I go, man, you're right. Like I need to go catch up on those. And that's what we offer each other, that accountability. Yeah.
Oh, there's one more tool. Can I tell you about my other favorite tool?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to plug. So Cave Day is this, it's this platform where you can log in and you're on Zoom with a bunch of strangers and you do these things called sprints where like you commit to working for 45 minutes on one thing and nothing else. And it's based on that whole concept of like attention confetti and how our phones are designed to like grab our attention. And they do this, they're doing this monthly challenge right now where you just list your tasks. And basically I have a list of tasks that I've said I'm going to do this month. One of them includes writing a newsletter, which now I said it out loud. So-
Yeah, now you have to.
Well, it's on my list too. And you pay money, which if you don't complete the task by the end of the month, you put a dollar amount on each of the tasks and then they bill you.
Whoa. Oh
And then
my
they-
gosh.
And then they donate it to charity.
Oh my
So
God.
it's like, it's so much different seeing this task list that has dollar, and there's a bunch of other people doing it. And we do a check-in every week to say like, hey, like we checked in this morning and it was like, what was a win? What,
Oh my God.
what did you
It's
get
called
done?
Cave Day?
Cave Day. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
I
looking
love
that
them.
up too.
Shout out to them too.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yay.
All right. You have a great rest of your 2023.
Thanks.
I will see you in the Coop because you're now contributing to Coop Plus. So we'll
Yeah.
see you there.
All right.
Thank you so much.